The silence of 2 a.m. was a predator. It stalked the corners of Mira Jensen's tiny apartment, amplifying the sounds that mattered and swallowing the ones that didn't. The drip from the kitchen faucet was a drumbeat of her failures. The hum of the ancient refrigerator was a sigh of resignation. But the sound that tore through it all, the one that shredded the last of her composure, was the cry of her son. Noah wasn't just fussy. It was a raw guttural wail of pure need. A sound that bypassed her ears and stabbed directly into her heart. He was hungry. It was a simple, primal problem with a solution she didn't have. Mira sat on the cold linoleum floor, the worn floral pattern pressing into her legs, a threadbare baby blanket wrapped around her shoulders like a shield that had long since broken. The lights were off, not for ambience, but because the final notice from the power company sat on the counter, a crisp white ghost in the moonlight. Sympathy didn't keep the grid running. His bottle, an hour ago, had been mostly water with the last dusty scoop from the bottom of the formula can. It hadn't been enough. It was never enough. Her gaze drifted to the empty can on the counter, its cheerful label a mockery. Nourish and grow. She was failing to do the one thing a mother was supposed to do. With hands that trembled from exhaustion and shame, she picked up her phone. The screen's glow was harsh, illuminating the exhaustion etched onto her face. Her thumb hovered over her brother's contact, Ben. He had helped before. His size and lectures a form of currency she had to pay along with the cash. The thought of hearing his weary disappointment again made her stomach clench. Mira, you have to get it together. You can't keep living like this. As if she had chosen this life. As if she wasn't fighting with everything she had. But this wasn't about her pride. Pride didn't soothe an aching stomach. Pride didn't stop a baby's cries. This was about Noah. She took a shaky breath and started typing, her words a staccato of desperation. Ben, I'm so sorry to bother you again. I need $50 for formula. Noah's almost out. I get paid Friday. I'll pay you back, please. Her thumb shook as she hit send. In her haste, in the fog of her panic, she didn't double-check the number. She didn't see that the last digit was a 7 instead of a 6. She didn't even look at the name. She just set the phone down on the floor, dropped her forehead to her knees, and wrapped her arms around her head, waiting for the buzz of a reply that would be equal parts rescue and judgment. 5 minutes crawled by, each second a fresh wave of Noah's cries. Then her phone vibrated against the floor. She snatched it up, her heart a frantic bird in her chest, ready for Ben's reluctant agreement. But the message wasn't from him. I think you meant to send that to someone else. Mira blinked. The words swam in front of her eyes. She stared at the screen, a cold dread washing over her, colder than the linoleum beneath her. One wrong digit. A single stupid mistake. She had just laid her soul bare to a complete stranger. Her stomach plummeted, a free fall of humiliation. Her fingers fumbled as she typed a reply, her face burning with shame. I'm so sorry. Please ignore. Wrong number. She locked the screen and tossed the phone aside as if it were contaminated, pulling the blanket tighter around herself. Another failure. A new inventive way to fail. She closed her eyes, willing the floor to swallow her whole. 3 blocks away, in a penthouse that scraped the clouds, Jackson Albright stared at the message on his private phone. This phone was a fortress. No press had this number. No assistants, no business partners. Only family, and that list had been brutally short for years. He almost deleted the text, dismissing it as a new, more personal kind of spam. But he paused. There was something in the simplicity of the words, in the raw, unvarnished plea. Noah's almost out. I get paid Friday. It wasn't a scammer's elaborate story. It was a mother's negotiation with her own dignity. Most nights he would have ignored it. The world was full of pain he couldn't fix, a lesson he had learned in the most brutal way possible. His life was a sterile monument to that lesson, built of glass and steel and emotional distance. But tonight, the 2 a.m. silence in his own home was just as predatory as it was in hers. He looked at the stark, minimalist art on his walls, the skyline glittering like a galaxy of lost souls below him. He was surrounded by everything, yet possessed nothing that mattered. Against every instinct he had cultivated for the last 2 years, he typed back, "Is your baby going to be okay?" Mira's phone buzzed again. She flinched. Why would they reply? What kind of stranger follows up on a wrong number with a question like that? Her first instinct was to block him, to erase the digital evidence of her mortification. But something about the question, about its simple, direct humanity, made her stop. He wasn't mocking her. He wasn't judging. He was just asking. "We'll manage," she wrote, the lie tasting like ash in her mouth. "Sorry again." The reply came back almost instantly. "I can help. No strings." She scoffed, the sound harsh in the quiet room. Strangers didn't help without strings. Strings were how the world worked. They were the invisible threads that pulled and manipulated, that always came with a cost. "Thanks, but I don't take money from strangers." Smart policy. "I'm Jackson. Now I'm not a stranger." She didn't reply. Instead, she went to Noah, lifting his small, trembling body from the crib. She rocked him, her own quiet tears mingling with his. A shared grief for a world that felt so hard and unforgiving. He eventually cried himself to sleep, his small chest hitching with exhaustion. She laid him down and stood over his crib, watching him, her heart a leaden weight. This couldn't be his life. Just couldn't. And then she did something she never thought she would do. Something that went against every rule of self-preservation she had. She picked up her phone, opened her Venmo app, and sent her payment handle to the stranger named Jackson. It was the most reckless act of hope she had ever committed. 3 seconds later, her phone buzzed with a notification. It wasn't the $50 she had begged for. $5,000 received from Jackson Albright. Mira sat frozen on the edge of her bed, the phone clutched in her hand. It had to be a mistake. Typo. She blinked twice, her mind refusing to process the numbers. She opened the app, her heart hammering against her ribs. She checked again. The number was still there. $5,000. It stared back at her. A figure so impossibly large it felt like a hallucination. "This is too much," she typed, her fingers numb. "I only needed $50. The reply was immediate. "It's already yours. Consider it one less thing to worry about." She didn't cry when she was laid off. She didn't cry when the tow truck took her car. She didn't even cry when Noah's father vanished the day she told him she was pregnant, ghosting her so completely it was as if he'd never existed. But this anonymous, inexplicable act of grace from a man she'd never met broke her. The dam of her composure shattered, and a sob tore from her throat, raw and ragged. Her hands shook so violently she could barely type. "Thank you. I don't even know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," he replied. "Just take care of Noah." And then she noticed it, a detail that sent a fresh chill down her spine, a cold prickle of unease that cut through her relief. In her desperate, rambling text to her brother, the one she had sent to him by mistake, she had written Noah's almost out. She had mentioned his name. She reread their entire exchange. He had never asked what her son's name was. He had just used it. The thought, small and sharp, lodged itself in her mind. How did he know? The fear was irrational, she told herself. He just read her first message carefully. But in the lonely, hollow hours of the night, every shadow looked like a threat, and every stranger's kindness felt like a question she didn't know how to answer. The number on the screen was an absurdity. $5,000. It was a sum so far removed from Mira Jensen's reality that it felt like a clerical error from another universe. For a long, breathless moment, she did nothing but stare, her mind a frantic scramble of disbelief and nascent, terrifying hope. She closed the app, her thumb trembling, and reopened it. The balance remained, a solid digital fact that defied the poverty closing in on her. The relief when it finally hit was a physical blow. It buckled her knees and she sank onto the edge of her worn mattress, a sob catching in her throat. It wasn't a cry of sadness, but of a pressure valve releasing after months of being tightened to the breaking point. She could buy formula. She could buy diapers and wipes and the good kind of teething biscuits Noah liked. She could pay the electric bill and silence the phantom hum of impending darkness. She picked up the phone again, her fingers hovering over the message thread with the stranger named Jackson. The gratitude was a wild, powerful thing, but suspicion was a coiled snake at its feet. She scrolled back up to his last message. Just take care of Noah. There it was again. His name. Her initial text, the one sent in a blind panic, had been a jumble of words. Ben, I'm so sorry. Noah's almost out. He must have just read it carefully. That was the logical explanation. But logic felt like a luxury tonight. In her world, large, no-strings-attached sums of money didn't fall from the sky. They were bait. She had seen enough women in her life fall for the illusion of a lifeline, only to find themselves ensnared in a debt that had nothing to do with money. She typed a cautious message, her gratitude warring with her self-preservation. I will pay you back. Every cent. Promise. The reply was swift, almost unnervingly so. There is nothing to pay back. Good night. And then silence. He didn't ask for her name, her address, or a single thing in return. The silence was more unsettling than any demand would have been. The next morning, Mira moved like a woman in a dream. After a night of fitful sleep, where she'd woken half a dozen times to check her phone, the money was still there. She strapped Noah into his carrier, his little body warm against her chest, and walked to the 24-hour grocery store. The automatic doors hissed open, and she was hit with the overwhelming scent of fluorescent lights, floor cleaner, and abundance. She walked the aisles, her steps hesitant at first, then with growing confidence. She didn't just grab the cheapest brand of formula. She bought the organic one reporters wrote about, the one with prebiotics. She bought diapers in bulk, wipes, baby food in glass jars instead of plastic pouches, and even a small plush giraffe with soft, stitched eyes that Noah immediately grabbed with a gurgle of delight. For herself, she bought fresh fruit, real coffee instead of instant, and a thick loaf of sourdough bread. Each item in the cart was a small act of rebellion against the scarcity that had defined her life. At the checkout, the total came to $237.45. She paid with a tap of her phone, her heart pounding, half expecting an error message. But the transaction went through. The receipt printed. It was real. Walking home in the pale morning light, the weight of the grocery bags a comforting ache in her arms and Noah babbling happily against her chest, Mira felt a flicker of something she hadn't felt in years, possibility. But as she unlocked the door to her apartment, the question returned, a persistent shadow in the corner of her mind. Who was Jackson Albright and what did he really want? That afternoon, after Noah was fed and napping peacefully with a full belly for the first time in weeks, Mira sat at her small kitchen table with her laptop. Her hands trembled slightly as she opened a browser. She was afraid to know, but more afraid not to. She typed his name into the search bar. Jackson Albright. The results loaded instantly and her stomach dropped. This wasn't just some wealthy, kind stranger. This was the Jackson Albright, CEO of Helix Core Industries, a tech mogul whose net worth was a string of numbers so long it seemed fictional. The articles called him the Ghost Mogul, a private, media-shy titan who had revolutionized biotech and data security. There were only a few pictures of him online, all from a few years ago. In them, he was sharp, intense, with cold eyes that seemed to look right through the camera. And then she found the articles that explained his retreat from public life. Tragedy strikes tech billionaire. 2 years ago, his wife, a renowned violinist, and his 5-year-old daughter were killed in a multi-car pileup on the interstate. The news reports described him as a man utterly shattered, who had since thrown himself into his work with a ferocious, almost punishing focus. He had no other children. He never remarried. He simply vanished behind the glass walls of his corporate empire. Mira's blood ran cold. This was the man who had sent her $5,000 because of a wrong number? A grieving reclusive billionaire who guarded his privacy with an iron will? It made no sense. It was too improbable, too dangerous. This wasn't a lifeline. This was an anomaly, and anomalies in her experience were rarely good news. Days turned into a week, and Mira settled into a fragile new routine. The immediate panic was gone, replaced by a low-grade hum of anxiety. She hadn't heard from Jackson again, and she hadn't reached out. She told herself it was a one-time fluke, a bizarre lightning strike of fortune she should just accept and move on from. She started applying for jobs again, polishing her old resume. The entry for biochem research assistant and junior forensic accountant felt like it belonged to another person from another lifetime. No one called back. One afternoon, as she was rocking a fussy Noah, her phone buzzed with a message from the unknown number. "I hope you and your son are doing well." Mira's heart leaped into her throat. He was still there, a silent presence in her digital life. She typed and deleted a dozen replies before settling on something simple. "We are. Thank you again. I'm still planning on paying you back." His reply came a minute later. "What was your field before Noah?" The question was so direct it caught her off guard. Why would he care? Biochem research. And some accounting. "You were in research." "I was an intern at Novagen before they downsized." She added, a bitter edge to her words, "But I also know how to scrub toilets and calculate taxes I can't afford to pay." She didn't expect a reply to that, but he surprised her. Novagen had a sloppy data protocol. "We acquired what was left of their patent portfolio last year." A beat of silence. Then another message that made her sit up straight. "Your resume is impressive." Mira froze. "How did you see my resume?" "You'd be surprised what you can find in publicly accessible data archives if you know where to look. Especially for former employees of a company you've acquired." The casual invasion of her privacy sent a chill down her spine, but it was quickly overshadowed by his next message. "I have a proposition for you. Helix Core is conducting a third-quarter financial review. I need a fresh set of eyes on our vendor accounts. Someone from the outside. A 3-month contract. The pay is more than fair, and you can work remotely or on-site. Flexible hours." Mira stared at the screen, her mind racing. A job offer. A real one. From Jackson Albright himself. It felt like a test, a trick. A setup for a punchline she couldn't see yet. "Why me?" She texted back, her thumb hovering over the send button. "Because you were willing to go without so your son wouldn't have to. Because you have pride, but not enough to let your child suffer. People like that are meticulous. They pay attention to details. And they don't have existing loyalties within my company. I'm not offering you charity. I'm offering you a chance to take your life back. Tell me yes, Mira." He had used her name. He must have found that in the data archives too. The use of it felt both intimate and calculated. This was insane. It was a leap into a world she didn't know. A world of power and money that could crush a person like her without a second thought. But what was the alternative? More nights staring at an empty formula can? More unanswered job applications? More silence? She looked down at Noah, now asleep in her arms, his small face a picture of innocent trust. She had to do it. For him. Yes, she typed. I'll take it. The week leading up to her first day was a blur of anxiety and preparation. Jackson arranged for a courier to deliver a contract and a company laptop, both arriving in sleek, anonymous packaging. The salary listed in the contract made her gasp. It was more than she used to make in 6 months. Felt like Monopoly money. Her biggest challenge was figuring out what to wear. Her pre-pregnancy work clothes were a distant memory, either too small or sold for rent money. She spent an entire afternoon at a thrift store, meticulously searching the racks until she found a simple black blazer that almost fit, a clean white blouse, and a pair of dark jeans that were her only presentable option. The night before, she barely slept, her mind a whirlwind of self-doubt. She was a single mom from a rundown apartment about to walk into the headquarters of a multi-billion-dollar tech empire. She wasn't just an outsider. She was an alien from another planet. The next morning, she tightened her grip on Noah's carrier and stepped through the rotating glass doors of the Helix Core Tower. The lobby was less an office building and more a modern art museum. No marble, no gold, just clean lines, soaring ceilings, and a quiet humming efficiency that made her feel instantly clumsy and underdressed. The air itself smelled expensive. At the reception desk, a woman with a sleek headset looked up. "Hi," Mira began, her voice barely a whisper. "I'm Mira Jensen. I have a 9 a.m. appointment." The woman's face lit up with an unnerving flash of recognition. "Of course, Ms. Jensen. You're expected. 37th floor. Ms. Lin will meet you at the elevator." The word expected sent a fresh wave of paranoia through her. She wasn't just an anonymous contractor. She was a person of interest. As she crossed the vast lobby, she felt the invisible weight of a dozen pairs of eyes, even if no one was actually looking. This wasn't a startup pretending to be important. This was the center of a universe she had only read about. By the time the elevator doors slid open with a soft chime on the top floor, her heart was pounding a frantic rhythm against her ribs. A woman in her mid-40s with immaculate black hair and a tablet in hand greeted her with a smile that was warm but professionally distant. "Mira, I'm Ava Lin, Chief of Staff to Mr. Albright. He's in meetings at the moment, but he asked me to show you around and get you settled." Ava's eyes flickered down to Noah, and for a second, Mira braced for a condescending remark about bringing a baby to a corporate office. But Ava's expression didn't change. She simply nodded. "We have a space prepared for him as well." Mira followed her down a hallway of frosted glass and brushed steel, the silence broken only by the soft click of Ava's heels. Security cameras, discreet but unmistakable, were mounted in the corners. "I'm not sure what this is," Mira said finally, her voice tight. "This whole thing feels like a setup for a punchline." Ava paused and turned, her smile softening slightly. "Mr. Albright doesn't do punchlines. He does precision." They stopped at a wide conference room with a floor-to-ceiling view of the city skyline. "He told me to show you this first," Ava said, unlocking the door with a tap of her keycard. Mira braced herself for a sterile boardroom, but the room inside wasn't a workspace. Her hand flew to her mouth, a gasp escaping before she could stop it. The room was a fully furnished nursery. A beautiful modern crib stood in one corner, a plush mobile of smiling stars hanging above it. There was a small changing table stocked with diapers and wipes, soft rugs on the floor, shelves filled with toys and books, even a mini fridge stocked with organic snacks and juice. It wasn't just a room. It was a sanctuary. It wasn't expensive for the sake of it. It was thoughtful. Every single detail, from the blackout curtains to the soft glow nightlight, communicated one thing with aching clarity. Someone had paid attention. She turned back to Ava, her eyes stinging with unshed tears, a single word caught in her throat. "Why?" Ava's professional mask slipped. and her gaze held Mira's with a flicker of genuine empathy. Because he knows what it feels like to walk in alone. 20 minutes later, Mira sat in a small, glass-walled office across the hall from the nursery. A fresh mug of coffee sat on her new desk, and Noah was happily exploring the soft rug next door. The door opened quietly, and she looked up to see Jackson Albright walk in. Seeing him in person was different, harder than she expected. He was exactly like the photos, tall, composed, wearing a perfectly tailored suit that probably cost more than her car had. But he was also undeniably real. There were tired lines around his eyes that the photos didn't capture, a slight stubble on his jaw, and a profound stillness about him. The quiet of a man who had built empires but hadn't truly smiled in a very long time. "Mira," he said, his voice calm and even as if they were old colleagues. "Thanks for coming." She stood awkwardly, unsure whether to offer her hand. "I wasn't sure if I should." "You came anyway," he replied, a hint of something unreadable in his eyes. "That's what matters." He sat across from her, not behind a desk, but at the small table in her office, creating an illusion of equality. "Before we discuss the work," he began, his gaze direct, "I want to be clear. You owe me nothing. This isn't a test, and I am not here to rescue you. I don't believe in charity." He paused, letting the words sink in. "But I do believe in investing in people. I saw someone who didn't ask for a shortcut, who was willing to go without before she let her son suffer. Someone like that, I trust with my company's financials." He slid a folder across the table. "Temporary position, 3 months. Financial audit support. Flexible hours. On-site or remote, your choice. The pay is in there. If it's not a fit, you walk away, no questions asked." Mira opened the folder and blinked at the number on the offer line. It was real. She glanced through the glass partition at Noah, then back at Jackson. "And the nursery?" He allowed himself the barest hint of a smile, a fleeting, tired thing. "Also real." For a long moment, a silent understanding passed between them. He had seen her desperation, but he had also seen her strength. He wasn't offering her a handout. He was offering her a weapon to fight her own battles. Finally, she closed the folder, took a deep breath, and nodded once. "I'll take it." Mira's first few weeks at Helix Core were a study in surreal adaptation. She established a rhythm that felt both dreamlike and rigorously real. Mornings began not with the dread of an empty formula can, but with the quiet hum of the high-speed elevator ascending 37 floors. She would settle Noah in the nursery, a room that was quickly becoming his favorite place in the world, his joyful babbles echoing softly through the glass partition into her sleek, minimalist office. Then, she would dive into the digital ocean of Helix Core's financials. The work was a homecoming. Her mind, long dormant and dulled by the anxieties of survival, clicked back into gear. It was like brushing off an old instrument and finding the melody still there, waiting. She navigated the complex systems with an intuitive grace, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she reconciled accounts, cross-referenced invoices, and traced the flow of capital through the veins of the corporate behemoth. It was on a Tuesday afternoon in her 3rd week that she found the first thread. It wasn't a glaring error. It was the opposite. It was a pattern of such subtle mathematical perfection that it felt unnatural. A series of vendor payments, all for different departments, R&D, marketing, logistics, all for amounts just under the $10,000 threshold that would trigger an automatic secondary audit. The vendor name was always the same: Trinox Solutions LLC. On the surface, everything looked legitimate. Each payment was signed off, time-stamped, and coded to a project. But when Mira tried to pull the project files associated with the codes, she hit a wall. They didn't exist. They were ghosts, digital placeholders for money that was flowing out into the ether. She felt a cold prickle on the back of her neck. This wasn't sloppy accounting. This was a masterpiece of deception. She remembered Jackson's explicit instruction. If you find something that doesn't look right, bring it directly to me. No one else. Her first instinct was to compile a report, but she needed more context. She decided to do a little reconnaissance. The name listed as the primary financial overseer for these departments was Vincent Harmon, the chief financial officer. According to the company directory, his office was on the same floor. Taking a deep breath, she walked down the hall, her heart a low, steady drum. Vincent Harmon was the living embodiment of corporate grace. When she entered his expansive corner office, he stood to greet her with a smile so polished it could have been focus grouped. He was handsome, with silvering temples and a suit that looked like it was woven from money itself. "Miss Jensen," he said, his voice smooth as silk. "Mira, welcome aboard. I've heard good things. Jackson has taken a special interest in your contract." He gestured for her to sit, his demeanor radiating a calm, confident authority. Mira felt an immediate, visceral sense of danger. It was the effortless charm, the way his eyes assessed her with a speed that felt less like a greeting and more like a threat assessment. "I was just reviewing some third-quarter vendor payouts," she began, keeping her voice even. "I came across a vendor, Trinox Solutions. I couldn't find any of their project briefs, and was hoping you could point me in the right direction." Vincent's smile didn't falter, but something shifted in his eyes, a flicker of coldness that was there and gone in a heartbeat. "Trinox," he mused, tapping his chin. "Ah yes. They handle some of our more sensitive acquisitions. Proprietary contracts. Most of that is firewalled for security reasons. It's all above board, of course, but on a need-to-know basis." He leaned forward, his voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. "A word of friendly advice, Mira. Jackson is a brilliant man, but since his tragedy, he can be a little paranoid. Sees shadows where there are none. Your time here will be much smoother if you focus on the larger balance sheets and don't get lost in the weeds." It was both a dismissal and a thinly veiled warning. Mira left his office with her polite smile fixed in place, the cold prickle on her neck now an icy chill. He wasn't just hiding something. He was the architect of it. That night, after putting Noah to bed, she messaged Jackson. "I need to see you. It's about the vendor accounts." He told her to come to his office. She took the elevator back up to the silent, darkened 37th floor. Jackson was waiting for her, the city lights spread out like a carpet of diamonds behind him. He wasn't wearing his suit jacket, and his tie was loosened. He looked weary. "Tell me," he said, his voice low. She laid it all out, the Trinox payments, the ghost project codes, her conversation with Vincent. Jackson listened without interruption, his expression hardening into a grim mask. When she finished, he exhaled slowly. "So it's him," he said, more to himself than to her. "I've been watching the numbers drift for 8 months. Percentage point here, half a point there. Too small to prove anything, but the company felt lighter. I brought it to the board, but Vincent assured them it was just market fluctuation and aggressive streamlining. He made me look like I was losing my grip." He looked at her, and for the first time, she saw the profound isolation of his position. He was a king in a glass castle, unable to trust his own court. "He knows I suspect him," Jackson continued. "That's why he brought you up. He was testing what you told me. And now he knows you're a threat." The air in the room crackled with a new tension. They were no longer just an employer and a contractor. They were co-conspirators, a secret alliance of two. The retaliation began the next day. It was subtle at first. A critical file she had been working on vanished from the shared drive. When she asked IT about it, they had no record of its existence. Ava, with a knowing, worried look, helped her restore it from a private backup, murmuring, "Be careful, Mira." A few days later, she arrived in the morning to find her workstation completely wiped. The screen was blank, her access denied. It took Ava half the day, pulling strings with high-level security, to get her system restored. The official explanation was a server glitch, but Mira knew it was a message from Vincent. "I can erase you." The threats were escalating, moving from the digital realm toward the physical. The breaking point came on a rainy Thursday evening. As she drove her recently purchased used car home on the slick freeway, a large black sedan began to tail her. It stayed on her bumper, its headlights glaring in her rearview mirror. When she switched lanes, it switched with her. As she took her exit ramp, the sedan suddenly accelerated, swerving hard toward her. Mira screamed, yanking the wheel. Her car skidded, tires screeching on the wet pavement, and slammed into the guardrail. The impact threw her forward against her seatbelt, and Noah, securely strapped in his car seat, let out a terrified wail. The black sedan sped off without stopping. Shaking, her body flooded with adrenaline, Mira checked on Noah. He was scared but unharmed. But as she sat there, the sound of the rain and her own ragged breathing filling the car, she knew with absolute certainty that this was no accident. This was Vincent. He wasn't just trying to scare her off the job. He was threatening her son. When she called Jackson, her voice was a choked whisper. He was there in 20 minutes, his personal driver pulling up behind her wrecked car. He didn't say a word. He just opened her car door, unbuckled a still sobbing Noah, and pulled him into his arms, holding the small child with a tenderness that was both heartbreaking and fierce. He looked at Mira, his face a mask of cold fury. "You're not going home," he said, his voice dangerously quiet. "You're both coming with me." He took them to a sleek, empty residence in a secure building he owned downtown, an apartment kept for visiting executives. It was clean, safe, and utterly impersonal. After Mira had calmed Noah and put him to sleep in a portable crib Ava had delivered, she found Jackson standing by the vast window, staring out at the rain-streaked city. The pressure, the fear, and the sheer exhaustion of the past few weeks finally overwhelmed her, and she began to cry, silent tears tracking down her face. Jackson turned, and the fury in his eyes had been replaced by a deep, aching sorrow. He walked over to her, his movements hesitant. "This is my fault," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "I pulled you into this. I put you and your son in danger." "It's not your fault," she whispered. "I chose to keep digging." He stood in front of her, so close she could feel the heat radiating from him. The space between them was charged with unspoken fear, with the shared trauma of the night, with a powerful magnetic pull that had been building for weeks. "2 years ago," he began, his voice barely audible, "after the accident, they told me it was a drunk driver who crossed the median. A random, senseless tragedy." He looked away, his jaw tight. "I lost everything that mattered in an instant. My wife, my daughter. Lily was 5. He swallowed hard, the pain still raw and gaping. "After that, I built walls. I focused on work because it was the only thing that didn't feel. But Vincent, he used my grief. He saw it as a weakness, an opportunity. He finally met her eyes, and she saw a terrifying vulnerability there. I can't. I will not let him harm anyone else. Especially not you or Noah." He reached out, his hand hovering for a moment before he gently brushed a stray tear from her cheek. His touch was electric, a jolt of warmth and connection that short-circuited every defense she had. They were no longer just allies. They were two profoundly wounded people who had found an anchor in the midst of a hurricane. The city lights blurred behind him as he leaned in, the air thick with everything they couldn't say. The world outside was dangerous and uncertain, but in that small, safe apartment, For a fleeting moment, they were the only two people alive. The safe house was both a sanctuary and a cage. For 2 days, Mira and Jackson operated out of the sterile executive apartment, the city sprawling beneath them, a glittering landscape of unseen enemies. The fear from the car crash had sharpened into a cold, diamond-hard resolve. This was no longer just about financial fraud, it was about survival. Vincent had crossed a line, proving he would stop at nothing to protect his empire of lies. Ava became their lifeline to the outside world, a ghost in the Helix core machine, feeding them encrypted data and system access through secure back channels. The apartment became their war room. Spreadsheets and encrypted files filled the laptop screens, evidence of Vincent's treachery laid bare. Amidst the tension, a strange domesticity took root. Jackson, the reclusive billionaire, would sit on the floor and patiently stack blocks with Noah, a gentle, sad smile touching his lips when the toddler would clap with delight. In these quiet moments, Mira saw the man he was before the grief, the father, the husband. The connection between them deepened, no longer just a spark of attraction but a powerful, grounding current of mutual trust and shared vulnerability. Vincent, feeling the net tighten, made his move. It was brilliant and utterly ruthless. On Friday morning, Ava sent them an urgent one-word message: boardroom. They watched through a hacked security feed on Mira's laptop as Vincent Harmon, the picture of calm concern, addressed an emergency meeting of the Helix core board. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. With surgical precision, he laid out a case not against himself but against Jackson. He presented falsified emails and doctored financial records, all pointing to a deeply troubled CEO. Jackson has been funneling company money into offshore accounts, Vincent explained, his voice laced with regret. Accounts linked to his late wife's overseas medical treatments. It appears he's trying to cover massive personal debts he incurred trying to save her. He hired Ms. Jensen, a desperate single mother with a checkered employment history, not as an auditor, but as a scapegoat to help him cook the books. The narrative was masterful. It painted Jackson as a grieving, unstable man clinging to the past, and Mira as his pawn. The board, already unsettled by Jackson's reclusive behavior, bought it completely. The vote was nearly unanimous. Jackson Albright was suspended as CEO, pending a full investigation. Security was dispatched to escort him from the building. Mira Jensen's contract was terminated, her system access immediately revoked. On the laptop screen, Mira watched as 2 security guards entered Jackson's real office on the 37th floor. From the safe house, Jackson watched his own downfall, his face a stony, unreadable mask. "He didn't just beat us," Mira whispered, her stomach twisting into a knot of despair. "He erased us." The feeds went dead. Her access was gone. They were cut off, locked out, and publicly disgraced. The silence in the apartment was absolute. It was the silence of defeat. Vincent had won. For an hour, Jackson said nothing. He just stood at the window, his back to her, a statue carved from grief and fury. Mira's mind raced, cycling through every piece of data she had seen, every file, every timestamp. There had to be something they missed, one loose thread in Vincent's perfect tapestry of lies. And then it hit her. An anomaly she had noticed but hadn't understood. "The server," she said, her voice cutting through the silence. Jackson turned slowly. "What server?" "There was an encrypted server I couldn't access," she explained, her words coming faster now. "It wasn't on the main Helix core network. It was routed through an external IP, but the data pings were coming from inside the building. Vincent's office. He was running a ghost server, a private digital vault. Everything he presented to the board was a fabrication. The real data, the real proof has to be on it." A flicker of light returned to Jackson's eyes. It was a long shot, a desperate gamble, but it was the only move they had left. The plan they formed was audacious, bordering on suicidal. The final board meeting to formalize Jackson's removal and appoint Vincent as interim CEO was scheduled for the next morning. They had one night. With Ava's help, who still had limited administrative access, they pieced together a strategy. Ava could create a temporary security blind spot by triggering a false fire alarm drill in a different sector of the building, drawing the main security patrol away for a crucial 15-minute window. During that time, Mira would have to get into the building, reach the 37th floor, access Vincent's office, and download the contents of the ghost server. Jackson, a pariah in his own company, would be her eyes and ears, guiding her through the building's security protocols from the safe house, using a set of architectural blueprints he had stored on a private drive. That night, Mira dressed in black, her heart a frantic drum against her ribs. Before she left, she stood over Noah, sleeping peacefully in the portable crib. She leaned down and kissed his soft cheek, whispering a promise. "I'll be back soon." Jackson met her at the door. He handed her a burner phone and a small flash drive. "Stay on the line with me the entire time," he said, his voice tight. "Don't take any risks. If it feels wrong, you get out." "Mira, are you sure about this?" She looked him in the eye, her own fear eclipsed by a fierce resolve. "He threatened my son, Jackson. There is no version of this where I walk away." He reached out and gripped her shoulder, his hand warm and steady. "Be safe," he murmured, the words heavy with everything he couldn't say. The Helix Core Tower was an imposing black monolith against the night sky. Following Jackson's instructions, Mira slipped in through a service entrance in the underground parking garage, Ava having remotely disabled the magnetic lock for precisely 60 seconds. The inside of the building was an eerie, silent world of shadows and humming machinery. "Okay, Mira, I'm in the system," Jackson's voice crackled through her earpiece. "Stairwell B is 17 paces to your left. No cameras. Go now." Her footsteps echoed in the concrete stairwell as she began the long climb to the 37th floor. Each floor was a lifetime. By the time she reached the top, her legs were burning and her lungs were screaming for air. She cracked the door and peered into the familiar, now alien hallway. It was empty. "Ava is triggering the diversion in 1. A distant, blaring alarm began to sound from the lower floors, followed by automated announcements. "Okay, you have 15 minutes. Go." Mira moved quickly, a ghost in the house she had briefly called her own. Vincent's office was locked. "The override code is my daughter's birthday," Jackson said, his voice thick with emotion. 0-8-1-4. The lock clicked open. The office was dark, the city lights painting long shadows on the walls. Mira's hand shook as she located the ghost server, a small black box tucked away beneath his desk, humming faintly. She plugged in the flash drive. The data transfer began, a small green bar crawling across the screen with agonizing slowness. 5 minutes left, Jackson's voice warned. Suddenly, a sound from the hallway, the chime of the private elevator. "Someone's coming," Mira whispered into the phone, her blood running cold. "He knows. Get out of there, Mira. Leave it." But the download was at 90%. She couldn't leave. Not now. She ducked behind Vincent's large desk just as the office door swung open. Vincent Harmon stepped inside, followed by 2 burly security guards. "Sweep the floor," Vincent commanded. The alarm was a decoy. "She's here." Mira held her breath, pressing herself against the cold metal of the desk. She could hear the heavy footsteps of the guards moving through the adjoining rooms. The progress bar on the laptop screen hit 100%. Download complete. With movements so slow they were agonizing, she ejected the drive, clutching it in her palm. A guard re-entered the main office. "Nothing, sir." Vincent let out a frustrated sigh. "Fine. Wait for me downstairs. I need to grab my personal drive." As the guards left, Vincent walked toward his desk. Mira's heart stopped. He was going to find her. But he stopped short, his attention caught by the laptop. The screensaver had come on, but the login prompt was active. He narrowed his eyes. He knew someone had been there. As he reached for the laptop, Mira's burner phone, which she'd forgotten to mute, buzzed with an incoming text from Jackson. "Get out now." The small vibration was just loud enough. Vincent froze, his head snapping up. His eyes scanned the darkened room and locked onto the shadow behind his desk. Their eyes met for a split second. A moment of pure, cold recognition. Mira didn't hesitate. She lunged from behind the desk, shoving a heavy leather chair into his path, and sprinted for the door. The next morning, the board was assembled to sign the final papers. Vincent Harmon stood at the head of the table, a picture of solemn duty. "It is with a heavy heart that we formalize this transition." The boardroom door swung open. Jackson Albright walked in, not in a suit, but in a simple dark sweater, looking more like a man than a mogul. Mira was right behind him. "This meeting is not over," Jackson said, his voice ringing with an authority they hadn't heard in years. "Vincent, before we sign anything, perhaps you'd like to explain this." On the large screen at the front of the room, Mira hit play. The contents of the flash drive filled the screen. Encrypted emails to foreign competitors. Bank statements from offshore accounts, showing millions siphoned not by Jackson, but by Vincent. And then the final damning file, a series of audio recordings. Vincent's voice, cold and clear, discussing a problem with a competitor's research lead 2 years ago. The research lead was Jackson. The solution was a staged car accident on the interstate. The date of the recording was 2 days before the crash that killed Jackson's wife and daughter. They hadn't been the target. He was. They had died in his place. A collective gasp went through the room. Vincent's face went white. The charm, the confidence, the power. It all dissolved, leaving behind the hollow shell of a murderer and a thief. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Federal agents, alerted by Jackson's legal team, were waiting outside the boardroom. Vincent and several board members who were complicit were taken into custody. The story exploded, but Jackson, with Mira's help, controlled the narrative. He addressed his company and the press, not as the broken man who had hidden from the world, but as a leader reborn, his purpose sharpened by loss and a renewed fight for justice. He stood at the podium, and when he finished his statement, he did something no one expected. He publicly thanked Mira Jensen, whose integrity and courage brought the truth to light when no one else could. He then offered her a new, permanent position, director of the newly formed Division of Corporate Oversight, with full autonomy and a direct line to the CEO. Months later, the storm had passed. Helix Core was stabilized, its corrupt elements purged. Mira was no longer a temporary contractor but a respected executive, building a new system of transparency from the ground up. She and Noah lived in a bright, sunny apartment in a safe neighborhood, the ghosts of her past finally laid to rest. The final scene was not in a boardroom or an office, but in a quiet park on a Sunday afternoon. Jackson was pushing Noah on a swing, his laughter genuine and free. He was no longer just her boss or her ally. He was the man who held her son's hands, who looked at her with an expression of such profound gratitude and affection that it left her breathless. Their journey had started with a desperate plea in the dark, a mistake that had led them through a labyrinth of danger and deceit. But standing there, watching the two most important people in her life, Mira knew it hadn't been a mistake at all. It was destiny. Jackson caught her eye from across the playground and smiled, a real genuine smile that reached his eyes. He sent her a text. She pulled out her phone and read it. "I think you have the right number. Do not forget to subscribe for more videos. Like, comment, and share.